You know, last year around this time, I made a video talking about Luigi's Mansion, and while that game is, pretty spooky, it's not really scary. I feel like I should probably rectify that by talking about a real scary game, like Resident Evil or Phantom Hourglass. Problem is, I don't want to play scary games, so I'ma just make an unoriginal joke about how indie horror games going viral is the scariest thing ever, and just call it a day. You know what's scarier than a horror game? An indie horror game. I mean, these things are very rarely toned down by publishers because the game is too scary. These people are generally free to make whatever they want, so it makes sense how some of these games can be some of the most disturbing things ever made. I mean, we're all serial killers deep down, just some people choose to actually express it. But you know what's even scarier than an indie horror game? A viral indie horror game. And I just finished writing in the unoriginal joke. Indie horror games don't generally go viral because they're the best of the best. These are the games worth everyone's attention. No. They generally go viral because kids are idiots and will watch anything online if it has marketable characters and is apparently supposed to be scary. That's not to say these games are all bad, far from it. They can have some pretty deep stories or amazing gameplay mechanics that actually make these games have a bit of a reason to exist. But let's be honest, most of these games don't really stand on their own very well and never would have really picked up any steam if it wasn't for YouTubers playing them and children watching the videos. Why is that? What makes these games special? What makes these games be the ones that children click on videos of endlessly? Well, I've got a list here of some of the most popular of these games, so why don't we take a look at these to try and figure out why indie horror games go viral. Starting with Slender, the grandfather of them all. The game that originally released was called Slender the 8 Pages, but I can't for the life of me find a version of that game that is still available. Instead, we have Slender the Arrival, which I think is a prequel story? I'm not really sure, but what I am sure of is that this game is boring. It's a walking simulator with nothing scary ever happening. I mean, sure, I only played this game for 30 minutes, and I know because there's a timer on your screen at all times, but still, something interesting should have happened in those 30 minutes at least. Slenderman appeared 2 whole times, and by appeared, I mean I saw him on top of a mountain in the distance before he vanished. I stopped playing this game because honestly, I was just bored the whole time. If I opened my settings, it told me that my goal was to find Katie, despite the fact that I have no idea who this is or why I should care to try and find her. I'll give this game this, however. The ambience was pretty creepy. There was this house that I had to explore, and I hated being in there because I knew I'd be screwed if something cornered me in there. So there's one of our first keys to success in creating a viral indie horror game. Give the game an overwhelming sense of dread. Make the player, or more accurately the viewer, think they're going to get attacked at any moment. Slender does this well, but in all honesty, it's kind of the only thing it did at all. Well, Slender may have been the grandfather of all viral indie horror games, but the true father of this subgenre of a subgenre has to be none other than Five Nights at Freddy's. I really can't believe that I'm about to talk about this game without even having talked about a Donkey Kong game yet. This game is a massive improvement over Slender in that it actually has good gameplay, to an extent. The first night is stupid easy, and anything past the fourth night is stupid difficult, so honestly, the most fun you'll get from this game are the second and third nights, where the multitasking is manageable, but not impossible. Here we see our second example of how to make a viral indie horror game. Have gameplay that's entertaining to watch, not necessarily to play. Five Nights at Freddy's is a blast when you're watching Markiplier or some other guy freak out about the most minor of jump scares, but when it's just you in a room by yourself, exhilarating. Gameplay is just kinda not engaging enough when you aren't constantly wisecracking to an invisible audience to really justify playing this game because you're just sitting there, looking at cameras, trying to keep the rabbit guy from brutally murdering you. Though, speaking of the rabbit guy, key to success number 3, make iconic and recognizable characters. This is the one used by game developers the most. I mean, almost every game on this list has a character that Hot Topic is just dying to make a plush of. We saw this already with Slender and Slenderman, but Slenderman was already a character that existed on the internet long before the games gave him the notoriety he has now. And obviously, Five Nights at Freddy's has Freddy in the gang. Having a character like this makes it easy for YouTubers to slap them on a thumbnail and for children to go, "Golden Freddy!" before clicking the video. The next game we have here to look at is Hello Neighbor. This game features an AI that learns your moves as you infiltrate his house. Get caught? You've only made the game harder for yourself. Supposedly. I hate this game. Being brutally honest here, but I was never a fan of Hello Neighbor, even when I was a dumb kid. The AI thing is a cool concept, but 90% of the time it just gets stuck and you're pretty much just free to go do whatever you want, which totally ruins rule number 1, create a sense of dread. Also, while this character design is unique and plushyable, this isn't scary. He looks like his name would just be Tom. Aside from the game design ideas, however, I also just kind of don't care for this game from a gameplay or storytelling standpoint. Plus, it's $30 and there's no demos. This is the only game for this video that I've never actually played myself. Now, you may say, it's immoral to review and rate a game without having played it, and to that I say, we're talking about Hello Neighbor here, pal. I don't think it really matters if I've played it or not. Now that I've gotten all my frustrations out, is there anything we can learn from this game? Well, there is a big mystery element to the game, namely, what is your neighbor hiding? Key to success number 4, give the people something to discuss with your game. If MatPat isn't able to make like 5 theories about your game, you've done something wrong. Five Nights at Freddy's is a great example of this, with how stupid and complex yet enticing its lore can be. Hello Neighbor has all this extract symbolism that honestly could mean anything and is kinda just completely stupid, but hey, at least it explains why the game got as big as it did. A game I have less problems with being popular is Bendy and the Ink Machine. This game's got some flair to it with its whole 20s cartoon aesthetic. However, its gameplay is pretty much just a somewhat more refined version of Slender's, where you pretty much just walk around looking for random things in this annoying maze of a workshop. I ended up looking up a map on my phone while playing just so I could figure out where the heck anything was. I did only play the demo, which only contains the first episode of the game, and from what I remember, this game actually does become a bit better in future episodes, but I didn't fully play the game, and I don't really remember anything beyond what I played, so I'm not going to review the game any longer. What I'm concerned with is what we can learn from this game. Like I said before, Bendy and the Ink Machine had an episodic release pattern when it was coming out, much like a Telltale game. Key to success number 5, keep people talking about your game. Slender did a horrible job with this, causing it to fade into relative obscurity really quickly. Five Nights at Freddy's released a game like every 2 to 3 months for a bit there, allowing for the game to still have a place in pop culture even today. Bendy and the Ink Machine is nowhere near as popular now as it once was, but the episodic release schedule is probably the best way to maintain cultural relevance, since you aren't even making a new game, you're just making the game longer with every release, and if you end each episode with a cliffhanger, it just makes it so when the next episode comes out in 2 to 3 months, everyone will be watching the videos right away. Another game that I actually kind of like is Doki Doki Literature Club. This is probably the scariest game from this list, and no, it's not because it looks like it originated from some guy in the basement who likes the country that made Waluigi a bit too much, but because of our good friend Violence. Due to the nature of this channel, I won't be showing some of the things that happen in this game, but trust me, it gets gruesome. So for the sake of getting all this anime stuff off of our screens as soon as possible, what can we learn from this game? Rule number 6. Have a nice, slow burn. Take a while to get to the horrific things. This game takes almost a full playthrough before things start getting murdery, and honestly, this is the best way to do it. Bendy and the Ink Machine only really has one creepy part at the entire first chapter, and that's right at the end when you have to run away from Bendy. Working up to a scary part of a game is a great way to keep the player or viewer morbidly curious throughout the whole thing. So we've gone over 6 ways to make a viral indie horror game. But does such a game exist? Such a game that uses all of these so perfectly, it feels like the game was factory produced to be the perfect viral indie horror game. Well, since nothing is sacred anymore, last year we were graced with the release of Poppy Playtime. This game is one of the most manufactured feeling games ever made. Feels as though it was created by an AI that was fed details about all the previous games I just talked about. And this is what was spat out. Let's go through our rules. Rule number 1, create a sense of dread. The environment is very creepy as you go deeper and deeper into this warehouse, so I'd say it accomplishes this. Rule 2, have gameplay that's fun to watch, not to play. This game is basically a walking simulator in the same vein as Benny and the Ink Machine, so checks this box. Have recognizable characters. This Cookie Monster looking guy is a solid example of this. I mean, I've seen so many plushes and hats of this thing, it's crazy. Gave the people something to discuss. There's definitely a mystery going on here, though I personally don't care enough to actually look into it. It's enough to make MatPat make videos, so yeah. Keep the spotlight on the game. It has the same release pattern as Bendy and the Ink Machine, where a new episode releases every few months or so, so this box is checked. And finally, having some genuinely scary moments in the game. Game hasn't been fully released yet, but the hallway chase sequences in the first and second chapters are tense, I guess. So, sure. With all these factors, it's no wonder that Poppy Playtime caught on like it did. However, something about this game just feels so corporate. Five Nights at Freddy's and Bendy and the Ink Machine, regardless of what you may think of them, had a certain level of care put into at least the earliest entries. They felt like they were being made by a person, not a machine. Whereas with Poppy Playtime, Mob Games, the developer of the game, were ready with a full merch store the second the game released. They even included NFTs of the characters, with lore included. They obviously knew this game would be a success, and because of that, I feel like the days of something going viral almost on accident are sadly over. As we've just discussed, there's a science to it now. We just talked about horror games, but what about big multiplayer crazes like Fortnite or Among Us? What about the biggest viral game of all time, Minecraft? There are reasons these games went viral, and if you analyze the patterns and know how to make a game, making your own viral games is probably not that hard. I don't know how to feel about this conclusion, because I generally feel pretty apathetic towards any game that goes viral nowadays. But, I mean, honestly, I've had some fun with some of them. So, like, the notion that they might be just going away is kind of scary. Wait a minute. I found out what the real scariest thing is. It's not a viral indie horror game. It's the economy.